Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Better Life, Better Business podcast presented by the Speakers Group. I'm Sean Ellis, founder of the Speakers Group, and today I'm talking with negotiation expert and best-selling author Ed Brodow, asking him for his best advice to help you be more comfortable and more successful in your daily negotiations. Ed was named one of the nation's leading deal makers by Forbes magazine, and former SEC chairman Harvey Pitt called him the king of negotiators. Ed created and led the negotiation boot camp for almost 20 years, and when he published his book by the same title, Jeffrey Gitomer said that buying it should be non-negotiable. Ed comes at negotiation with a practical, no-nonsense approach, and that has allowed him to help thousands of people around the world overcome their fears and get what they want in business and in their personal lives. And if that doesn't impress you, he also has the distinction of being the only negotiation expert who has made love to Jessica Lange, on screen anyway, which I'll let him explain. Ed, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, and thanks for that wonderful introduction.
No, well, thanks again. And is there anything you want to add to that?
Well, I don't want to besmirch Jessica Lange's reputation, but that is, I did make love to her on screen.
Well, I have to say, you're the only speaker I've talked to, negotiation or not. You're the only speaker who's told me that so far. So
I know it's a distinction that I have.
Definitely. Well, good. Well, again, I'm honored to be with you today. I remember it was, I guess, about 5 years ago, the first time we actually worked together on a staffing industry event in Dallas, and I'm thrilled to have you as a colleague here at the Speakers Group. So, well, let's get right into it today, because just the thought of negotiation is a scary thing for a lot of us. So, coming out of the gates, how can we get over our anxiety about negotiating?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, most of the people that I talk to, when I ask them about it, they tell me they really don't like to negotiate. They don't look forward to it, which is a pity because we have to negotiate constantly. If you look at your daily existence, you're negotiating all the time. And I think that people ought to develop some level of comfort with it. Otherwise, you're going to have an uncomfortable life. And the way to get over it is really, it's an attitudinal thing. I think that most people think of negotiation as a contest. Yeah. And a contest means that you win and I lose, or I win and you lose. It has to be a winner and a loser in a contest, right?
Right.
Isn't that so?
Right.
Yeah. So once you take that as your attitude, then you're going to be nervous because you might be the one to lose, and of course you don't want to lose. So the way to get rid of that anxiety is to stop thinking about negotiating as a contest and start thinking of it as a collaboration in which you and I work together to try to solve a problem. And what is the problem in a negotiation? The problem is, how can we work it out so that both you and I walk away feeling satisfied? That's the problem inherent in every negotiation. So if we can work it out so that both of us feel satisfied and we're working together and we're partners, no more anxiety.
Right. I love that.
I mean, it makes sense. Doesn't it make sense? I mean, it's really basically very, very simple, but it's hard because people are so used to thinking of negotiating as an adversarial activity.
Right.
It's confrontational, and it really doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I love that, and it just that shift in mindset, because you change from going into it thinking, this is a battle and I've got to win, or you go in scared, feeling like I can't win. But if you go into it as thinking of it as a collaboration, it totally changes things. What would you say? What is your secret or tip for negotiating with someone who might be, I guess we could call them difficult, or maybe somebody that doesn't quite have that collaborative perspective yet? What's your suggestion on negotiating with someone like that?
It's interesting you would ask that question, because I've been noticing lately there are a lot of books coming out about how to deal with difficult people and how to do this with them and how to do that with them. And I have a different approach to this. My approach is that the only really difficult person that you ever have to deal with is you. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Psychologically, and when I say psychologically, you can ask any psychologist or psychiatrist. They will tell you that you cannot control anyone else's behavior. The only behavior that you can control is your own behavior. So when you're dealing with a difficult person, instead of trying to change their behavior, the thing to do is to try to change your behavior. Now, I give you an example. Somebody insults you. They say something nasty to you. What's the normal response? We go back. We mirror their behavior. So if they're nasty to us, we're nasty to them. Well, what I teach is you don't do that. You change your behavior and treat the other person as though they are a partner. So that if somebody is nasty or rude, instead of being rude back to them, you say, all right, there must be a reason. What's the reason for their behavior? Why are they behaving this way? Let me try to understand that person. Let me try to figure it out. And once you understand where they're coming from, you don't have to take it personally. You don't have to respond in kind, but you can respond kindly, if you follow my meaning. You can respond in an affectionate way, and it's amazing how people respond to that. So the key, in my opinion, to dealing with a difficult person is to be responsible for your own behavior. Don't get angry. Try to understand where they're coming from. Try to, walk a little bit in their shoes and see what's going on there, and then come back in an affectionate, constructive way.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I guess the common theme in both of these questions or both of these answers is, it's back about us. It's either our mindset and our perspective, and then our behavior. I don't know what the other person's going to do on the other side of the table, but what you're saying is take responsibility for me and how I respond, how I behave in that situation.
Well, when I speak, I have a wonderful example that I give of something that happened to me personally, where I was challenged by someone who came at me in a very confrontive way. And it's an example that everybody can relate to because it has to do with my neighbor, my next-door neighbor. Everybody's had some kind of a problem with their neighbor. And the way that I dealt with it is very instructive and it illustrates the point that I'm trying to make about how you change your own behavior, and the result is that they begin to change their behavior.
Yeah, I remember that story now that you mention it.
Story about the fence, my neighbor with the fence?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I built it, I extended the fence between our properties because I wanted some privacy, and my neighbor went ballistic on me and just started accusing me of all kinds of things. And my first reaction was anger.
Yeah.
How dare she give me that nonsense? And fortunately, I was able to deal with my own anger. I could experience my anger, but that doesn't mean that I have to act on it. I dealt with it internally, and instead of projecting my anger at her, I treated her as though she was really a partner, and I dealt with her in an affectionate way. And she was so surprised that it just completely took the wind out of her aggression.
Great advice. And if someone wants to learn more about this and your strategies, your approach to negotiation, let me go ahead and give a couple of websites here where people can connect with you. Obviously, you're on thespeakersgroup.com, but negotiationbootcamp.com and also Brodow.com, BRODOW.com, where you can learn a lot more about Ed and his books and programs and resources. Let me ask you this, Ed. What we've covered some things, some success strategies for negotiation. What are a couple of the biggest mistakes that you see people make when they negotiate?
Mistakes?
Right.
Well, I think the two biggest mistakes that people make are, first of all, they don't listen. I think listening is the number one personal skill that people need to develop if they want to be a successful negotiator, learning how to listen. And the second mistake is they're in a hurry, which I attribute to a cultural problem that we have. If you go to other parts of the world, the Far East, for example, or South America, or the Middle East, they look at time differently than we do in North America and Europe. we're in a hurry. We want to get everything over with. If you talk to anybody who's negotiated with the Japanese, for example, they don't have that attitude. They want to take their time. They want to get to know you. They want to get information. They realize that the faster they move, the more mistakes they're going to make. So people in this country have to learn to slow down and take their time, and they have to learn how to listen.
Good advice. That reminds me of a time in a restaurant in Mexico. I was there actually with another speaker, and sitting there we sat down, and it took a long time before anyone came up to take our order, and there was no apology. Whereas here, if you sit and wait in a restaurant for for 30 seconds, you're all of a sudden been out of shape. What kind of service is this? But it was just you could sense that things were just moving at a little different pace, and it wasn't that the service was poor. It was just there wasn't that hurried nature there, and it actually it was a very relaxed atmosphere, which was a nice thing. So that's what comes to mind when you say that.
Well, it's funny you'd mention that example, because one of the examples that I give is something that happened to me in Colombia. In South America, the same thing.
Yeah.
Where they used to take 2.5 hours or whatever to serve us dinner in this hotel I was staying at, and at first I couldn't understand it. Then I began to realize that their attitude is when you eat dinner, you relax, you take your time, you don't rush, and in the final analysis, it's much better for your digestion.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So there's some good life lessons in there beyond just negotiation. Well, as we wrap this up, if people only take one thing away from this interview, let me just close it out with this question: what is your number one tip for successful negotiating? If someone's only going to remember one thing,
okay, I can only give one tip.
One tip.
Okay, that would be what I call Brodow's law, which is always be willing to walk away from a negotiation. And let me explain briefly what I mean by that. That is, I think people tend to be very desperate when they get into a negotiation. They feel they've got to close the deal, they've got to make it happen. I say this: if you cannot get the terms and conditions and arrangements that you need out of the negotiation, then I say pass. Nothing is there are always alternatives. So another way of putting what I said is to say always have alternatives, always have other, plan B, because once you become so dependent on the outcome of a negotiation, you lose your ability to negotiate, and you have to be willing to say, if I can't get what I want, I'm going to walk away. Now, people think I'm saying that they should walk away. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying you should be willing to walk away, because something happens when you have this attitude. People, the person you're dealing with, they pick it up. They get it. They understand that they're dealing with a tough customer, and that you're not just going to fold when the wind blows. You see what I'm saying?
Definitely.
So it's this internal adjustment. When I say I'm willing to walk away, that can make all the difference in a negotiation.
Great. Well, that's excellent advice, Ed. And again, let me give the websites. If people want to connect with you, negotiationbootcamp.com, brodow.com. Also, if you haven't read Ed's book, Negotiation Bootcamp, check that out. You can get it through Ed's site or on Amazon.com, your favorite bookseller. That comes out of Ed's experience doing the Negotiation Bootcamp seminar, that went on for close to 20 years, Ed? Or I know you still do that
correct.
for companies now, right?
I'm still doing it. Yeah, it's been about 20 years now, and I've got some really great client list.
Very good. So connect with Ed there. Great advice, Ed. Thank you again for being here. Thanks to you who are listening to the Better Life, Better Business podcast, and we'll see you next time.